What is going on, everybody? This is the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. Every single show, we're talking to the experts, getting you the lowdown on the digital social marketing world and the ever-changing digital landscape. We got episode 33. 33 when I think, Scottie Pippen. Everybody, when I was a kid growing up in basketball, everybody wanted 23. And I just stayed away from it. I'm just like, give me 33. I'll take Scottie all day. Scottie was my guy. So this is the Scottie Pippen podcast. Listen, you had Larry Bird. You had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Lauren, who helps us on the show, used to work at the Miami Heat. She said, don't forget about Alonzo Mourning. You know, we're talking about a top 200 player. We got to make sure we get up in the top 50s with Scottie. Scottie, I will say the Scottie Pippen podcast. That's all I'll say. Ben Hunt actually spent some time at the San Antonio Spurs. And when I say time, I mean 7 years. So that's actually a good amount of time. So I think we'll talk a little NBA too here towards the top. But I think him being at an NBA team and now at the Denver Broncos, of course, being the director of digital media. We'll get into the NFL. Right now we're in that season, right? The schedule release, NFL draft, and he's gearing up for all that. But that's really when a lot of the NFL clients of ours and teams and everything like that really start to gear up for really a 6-month crazy stretch, or 7-8 month at some point. The draft happens, there's a little bit of a lull, and then come August 1st, it's just a crazy amount of work all the way until Christmas time. So I know that's coming up for him. Excited to talk to him. Episode 33, the director of digital media at the Denver Broncos, Ben Hunt. All right, he is the director of digital media at the Denver Broncos. Ben Hunt joins us. Ben, thanks so much for the time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so we always start off with a random question. I know you're a basketball junkie like myself. Who is the NBA's MVP, Giannis or James Harden?
Oh, that's tough. What both of the players have done this year is really, off the charts from an individual and team perspective. Mm-hmm. James has put up a lot of points, but I think Giannis probably has the edge just from the wow factor. And if you're taking in, the way fans consume the game now, I think Giannis is probably edging that bit on James.
Yeah, and I think you can't really fault Giannis for not having injuries like the Rockets did, because the reason why James put together those, string of 40 and 30-point games was because he literally had to carry the squad. Giannis had to do that, but the Bucks being where they were, the Bucks have been nowhere near playoff contention for 30 years. So
yeah, got to give a shout out to Coach Bud too. He's done a heck of a job. Head coaching that team, and obviously a Spurs tie there, so near and dear to my heart. But at this point, I slightly probably give the edge to Giannis.
Yeah, I'm Greek, so I've always been a big fan of the Greek Freak, man. As a former Spur, you're probably loving this, but in your opinion, will my Lakers figure it out this offseason, or is it doomsday?
I think the Lakers will always figure it out. It just depends on how long it's going to take them to figure it out, right?
We don't have time on our side.
Yeah, well, when you have a lot of success, you become a little bit more impatient, right? Yeah. You expect return on investment immediately, and I have confidence that the Lakers will get things turned around.
Appreciate that, man. All right. Starting things off good here. Okay, so you actually, to your point about some NBA talk, you spent 7 years at the San Antonio Spurs, and then you've moved on to the NFL and the Denver Broncos since 2014, I believe. So I think we actually talked back when you were at the Spurs, so it's been a good ride for you and all the career success. But can you give the listeners just a quick breakdown of your current role at the Broncos and what you oversee day to day?
Yeah, so director of digital at the Broncos. That's a expansive title, but pretty much all the content that's on all of our platforms, our website, our app, and all our social channels. Plus, we obviously try to look into new technologies, and that takes a while to vet all those different pieces that we might want to use to some degree. So a lot of that too, not just with the app, but what social tools we might use or those types of things. So that's what I oversee. My team does a fantastic job. We have a great bunch of content providers, and they definitely do the yeoman's work day in and day out.
Nice. Well, it's funny. This is a little bit inside baseball talk for those that work in the NFL, but this NFL schedule release has been turned into such a big day in the NFL and such a, I guess, people just competing against each other for who's going to have the coolest schedule release. I guess I wanted to get your thoughts outside of yours because you're biased, which I thought was a really well done job. Who do you think won NFL schedule release day?
I mean, somebody commented last week on Twitter, I think, that it's become an arms race for the
Yeah,
schedule
yeah,
release. And I absolutely believe it. It's a day that we get to capture, the entire NFL market's attention, which is obviously great for us.
and keep in
But,
mind it's a very rare day for the NFL because everybody's on the same level playing field for once, rather than a team that has 2 wins versus 14 wins type deal.
yeah, I mean, as far as who did it the best, I mean, there's a few teams out there that I thought took really creative slants on it. I mean, I got to give a shout out to the Chargers, Joel and Megan and that team. I mean, the stock images,
That's
that was
great.
very creative. I don't think too many brands maybe have the courage to go in that direction. I also like what the Panthers did. I thought tying in the retro video games, which we tied in the Madden aspect for ours. I think that hits to a more casual fan that, as opposed to just here's the list of the schedule. It gives them an opportunity to think of the schedule differently, right? And I think the Panthers did a really great job with that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's get into just overall some of your beliefs or tactics. How do you approach social and coming from the NBA and going to the Broncos internally, kind of what's your core belief and how do you approach it?
Well, I mean, we want to create the best content we can and engage our audience. And, over the past 5 years now, the social media platforms have changed a lot, right? I mean, whether it's constant evolution of, Twitter giving you more characters or Facebook's algorithm changing every 6, 8, 9, 12 months.
I feel like it changes every day. We just don't know.
It probably does.
Yeah.
But no, I think trying to catch up with that, can be a lot for all of us there.
Amen.
But, I think for us, it's still, delivering good stories, delivering good content to our fans. And what all these platforms have really separated themselves on is it's not good enough to just post the same thing across all your digital channels, digital and social channels. So we have to get, smarter about where we're putting things. We don't necessarily need to look at every piece of content. It needs to be spread ubiquitously across all the platforms. But it gets into deeper of knowing who those audiences are. The Twitter audience is way different than what your Instagram audience is versus your Facebook audience. So it's really finding out what really resonates with those fans and trying to drive that message home.
And for you, how do you make the decision either internally or just, for your team when you're going to invest in a new feature or platform? You look at IGTV, a lot of people are, that algorithm seems to be juiced right now, which is nice for marketers. TikTok is obviously an incredibly impressive platform right now, but there's only so much time in the day. So at the Broncos level, how do you make the decision to spend that extra 3 hours to make a vertical video for IGTV specifically? Like, how do you balance that internally?
Yeah, so IGTV specifically is not something that we've done a lot in, really. We don't typically want to be first movers in the space. I know there's a lot of my counterparts out there that always want to be in the first new thing when it comes out, but I want to be able to
let them figure it out.
Yeah, well, it's also using our resources that's best going to benefit us and our fans, right? So, I mean, if it's TikTok or Instagram stories or, IGTV, Facebook Watch is an example of that, right? So, I mean, there's all the platforms are creating all these different areas to grab your attention. And it may not always be effective for us to just go out there and go full bore on one. So we kind of let it play out a little bit and see where it's going before we jump in with both feet. But we'll stick our toe in the water and check it out. But that's not something I want us to get tied to get, all of our fans invested in it. And then we have to pull the plug on it at some point. I don't think that's a good experience for anyone.
That makes total sense. What is a common mistake that you see potentially other teams, without naming names, other teams or other brands making when it comes to managing their community on social?
I mean, I think that this is, across all teams, ours included. I mean, you got to be able to take risk. I think, we all understand that, our social communities are a place where people are having fun and they're entertaining, and everything doesn't have to be so straight-laced. And I feel like sometimes we as brands can get so protected behind who we are and who our brand represents and how we represent our brands that we can be too cautious. So, I mean, I think it should be a place where we have more fun and a place where we can, take a little bit more risk. Now, of course, you have the peanut gallery across social that something fails, you just get completely, torn to shreds. But, to some degree, I think that there's a benefit in that, right? So, and by benefit in getting torn to shreds, it's like, hey, at least you're driving a conversation now.
Yeah.
That's the one thing you can take away from it. When you're too cautious, I believe at times people take that for granted and are more willing to move on.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Chargers too with the stock video, which I think all of us in social appreciated. But I think you can agree with me on this too. I can totally see the president or the owner of the franchise walking in going, what the hell is this? Like, this is a big moment for our team. John Elway walks in your office. Like, I just saw this come across my Instagram. What is this stupid goat thing? Like, oh, no, John, they like it. Trust me. I mean, you kind of have to balance that, right? Like, because you have to answer to not only what's cool on social, but also how do you represent the Denver Bronco brand from the top down?
Absolutely. I think, having a clear communication of what you're trying to do up front. We engaged our partnership team early, and it's like, we'd like to incorporate a partner of ours.
Yep.
And we want gaming, so we thought Madden made sense for us. But yeah, I mean, you have to have communication on what you're trying to do, and then at the end of the day, have buy-in. And in the Chargers example, they executed, so I'm guessing they must have had from the very top, right?
Yeah, that's probably something you've dealt with your whole career so far, but with being in social and the algorithm changes, like you mentioned earlier in the show, there's a lot of social touches everybody. It touches PR, marketing, the ownership, the coaches, the players, and a lot of people have opinions on what should be up on social and why haven't you given X, Y, or Z love. Have you had any, I guess, tips and tricks for the listeners out there to explain how social works and why you need to have quality over quantity and things like that?
It's tough, man. It's a battle I think everybody in my position fights every day. I wish I could say we do it as well as I would like to on all cases. But sometimes you have to figure out, is this the hill worth dying on, right? And sometimes it might not be. There are often times where you're so passionate about something that you do want to, stake your flag in it and say, this is where we're not moving. But at the end of the day, I think one of your guests before is like trying to find polite ways to say no.
Yeah. Yep.
And that can be tough. We understand that, we have, a large fan base that, to some degree, we need to be able to get messages out that are organizational from an organization's perspective. But at the same time, we have to be able to figure out what's the most effective way to get that message out. It's not just plaster it all over social necessarily to make that work. And that's always a learning process. One of the campaigns that we did over the past year was we have a Taste of Broncos, which, is basically a tailgating food that we sell tickets for, but all the money goes to the Food Bank of the Rockies. So it's a great cause,
Gotcha.
But it doesn't necessarily resonate to all the fans that are outside of Colorado.
Yep.
And one thing we did this year was we made a paid campaign for it, and it was a lot better performance. We were lucky to have Vaughn take place, and he was a celebrity waiter. Benjamin was his name.
Nice.
And we basically created an audience off the people who watched that content, and then served them the Taste of the Broncos ad. And
Smart.
In year two, we significantly outpaced what the sales were for year one just by taking a different tactic. So a lot of times it's just educating the powers that be of what that process is and how you can best help them.
I think another tactic too I've seen work is creating some sub channels, like and I'm not sure how you guys set it up internally, but an @Broncos PR account, and that can be more of the the stuff that needs to get out there in space, but not necessarily plastered across the mothership handle. Have you utilized some of that as well to get the message out and retweet, just not to affect overall engagement?
Yeah, so our senior VP or EVP of PR, Patrick Smythe, he has his Twitter account. We'll retweet from that a lot. Our community relations department, they have an account, Broncos Off Field. Then we also have a promos account. So we suggest that a lot of times some of the messaging come from those, and we're happy to help amplify them then. But the content that it's the source that it's originating from, the content better aligns that way.
Absolutely. All right. Where do you currently think the undervalued attention is in digital media overall?
I think you hit on it earlier. I think it's less is more. if we turn the page, back a couple of years, the platforms were telling us post everything, right? Just keep posting them and we'll sort it out and help you. Well, it's coming back to more of the 2010, 2011, 2012 theory of this is really community building, right? And we really want to give the best content in these places, not necessarily just plaster it everywhere. So there's still a lot of folks out there, and we're guilty of it too, of still just posting too much.
Yes.
And I think that's where the undervalued attention is. And again, that comes with just buy-in from all our different organizations.
That being said, what do you think about game day? Because I think on Twitter specifically for an NFL team, how are you going into it this season? Is it any different than the last couple of years in terms of making sure the fans up to date on what's happening in the game? What's your philosophy on game day?
Yeah, so we challenged our game day strategy a little last year. We kind of let Twitter be our fire hose, as that's where the constant source of information is. But we definitely scaled back what we were posting on Facebook as a whole. Yeah. We decided to really go with the strongest images just on Facebook.
And to your point, Facebook, Instagram is not the real-time platform that Twitter is.
Right. Yeah. And on Instagram, we focused on those really high-level photos. There's a ton of just awesome photo accounts out there on Instagram, and those seem to be the ones that resonate the most with their audiences. So those were the two opportunities on doing a little bit more, just on Twitter and then on Instagram. But Facebook, we definitely pulled back. I liked where we were at. I think on Twitter, it's tough to always satisfy the appetite of those real-time updates. Yeah. But I think we're looking into maybe be more about the excitement and less about the play-by-play in the coming year, which makes a lot of sense if you just think about how the content's consumed there.
And I don't know if you've seen this too on your platforms, but I've seen it a lot, even as of late, especially on Instagram. It's almost like the old overnight ratings in Nielsen. The content, because of the algorithm, is being pushed. You post it on a Sunday night football game, and that next day, on that Monday, you'll get way more engagement than you did probably during the actual game, because it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving with the algorithm the next day.
Yeah, and especially when you win, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you're getting that tremendous upside on that Monday. But yeah, people love to see that in their feed, and they engage with it, and then it resurfaces again, or another picture maybe surfaces up again. So yeah, no, I think Instagram's definitely a place that doesn't necessarily need to have your score graphics on it as much, but capturing the excitement of the game really makes a lot of sense there.
How do you measure year-over-year success? Because I think in sports, it's so determined, like you said earlier, about the success on the field. And you may even have a 7-9 season compared to a 9-7, but the 7-9 had 3 Hail Marys that just led to a crazy amount of engagement. So the next year, although you've won more, your engagement year-over-year may be down. How do you explain that internally? And I guess, what are you guys looking at to make sure you're growing, but also looking at what's happening on the field?
Yeah, I think it's breaking it down by platform on what your expectations are as there. I mean, as a whole, sure, we want to see engagement up across the board on everything. But, there's so many metrics that we can, measure ourselves by that it's really a tough position to say that we want to be the best in these 10 different categories. Yeah. And to some degree, that those different metrics might work against each other, specifically, just our app and our website. But on social, I mean, it's pretty easy to engage the reach you're getting. It's pretty easy to gauge the engagement you're getting. And as long as we see those going, in positive ways, that makes me happy. We'd all love to be able to see, triple-digit, quadruple-digit percentage fan growth, but in some of these areas, that's just not attainable. So all you got to do is just keep, coming back to my Spurs days with Coach Pop, just keep pounding the rock, right? Even when you're having a bad season, as long as you're delivering that good content, it's not the 100th blow that breaks the stone. It's the 99 that went before it. So you just got to keep going at it. Yeah.
Speaking of that, I saw Skip Bayless say Ginobili was a top 30 player of all time. I know you're a big Ginobili guy, but come on.
Top 30 all time. I mean, as far as a great person,
yeah, exactly. Okay, there we go.
He's been one of the best people that I've ever had the opportunity to work with. I mean, if we're talking international players, then
of course
I don't have a question about that. Right. What he meant to a franchise, maybe we can argue that, but there's been a long list of great basketball players, and it's hard to be able to put any guy without the accolades of a Tim Duncan and a Bill Russell and
Right.
a LeBron James and a Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
in the tops.
I agree. Okay, so I got a nightmare scenario for you. The Broncos go 0-16. Let's say we have a crystal ball. You guys go 0-16 this year. But if you knew that today, what are the things you can control? So you know that on field is going to be really bad. Fans are going to be irritated. But there are certain things you can control to make sure that you're still building the community and speaking to fans. What would your strategy be, just off the top of your head, if that happens? Because the Browns have had to deal with it quite a bit in the last decade.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to the Browns. I think they've done a tremendous job, just building their fan base and creating excitement and entertaining and engaging content. They have one of the most hardcore, dedicated fan base, much like our own, that wants results, right? And they want the straight football news to some extent, but that's not really what, in our space, tells you up for long-term success. One, you have to be truthful, right? You have to be able to call the bad things as they're happening. And one of the posts I think we did either last year or the year before was, just having empathy with our fans. Like that was a tough loss. Yeah. Just recognizing that with our fans. I mean, that was a good post for us as far as engagement and, replies go. But you also have to have a sense of humor. You obviously need to have some entertaining content, like I was mentioning earlier, because those hardcore fans, you don't want them to turn complacent, but at least you want them to be able to somewhat be able to laugh through their pain, I guess. So you got to be honest, and you got to be entertaining, and you got to be able to at least be providing them something outside of what they're disconnecting for their passion for their football team,
right?
But shift that from the off field to more of this is more lighthearted pieces of work we hope you like.
Yeah, I think you're so right about that. Just being genuine to the audience of what's happening. And I like that empathy, because I remember as a Laker fan when we were like 28 and whatever with back in the day with D'Angelo Russell and crew, there was a tweet on the main account as we're getting beat by 25. The Lakers have the best 3-point percentage in the third quarter this season in the entire NBA. It's like, come on, like now you're reaching type deal. And rather than just saying, hey guys, like another tough loss, like you mentioned, just kind of being more genuine.
Yeah, that happens to us all. I mean, it comes back to being willing to be honest, but also from an organizational perspective, you want to at least shed some type of positivity when you can. I'm not saying that particular tweet was
that was
ideal,
reaching a little bit, yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, there are good things happening that might not just come out as a win and loss.
Right.
And you got to be able to at least recognize those when they're worthwhile to do so.
Yep. I want to talk about your team and just the culture inside the Broncos, because I think it's important, especially in sports. I mean, you get NFL 365, and we just talked about before the show started the NFL schedule release and the NFL draft. And now you guys are kind of gearing up for a crazy 6-month sprint here. How have you built your team internally, and what's the culture when you guys are working those long hours and making sure you stay positive type deal?
Yeah, so the team is mostly content providers. We have a designer and we have 2 designers and developers who are part of our staff, but everybody else is focused on creating content, and they're together on every road trip. Everything that goes on as far as content. I'm here when drafts, coach hirings, that type of stuff are going on, but they're a really tight knit group. There are a lot of friendships in the room. I think just as far as they working together and creating content, when you have 9 people doing that, I mean, communication, right, is at a premium. And you kind of get in the position of automatically maybe presuming what your counterpart's doing, but sometimes it's just being direct and following up with an email as opposed to more casual conversation. So for us, I mean, I'm big on trying to help us with communication and however we can. I think all organizations, you can probably identify with this, is it's always better to try to over communicate than under communicate. If there's a misunderstanding from over communication, that's something that you can always work out. If it's something that's you're under communicating on, then that makes it a challenge on both the person originating that message and whoever needs to receive it. So that's where we try to do better at every day, is just being better communicators with each other.
If you're hiring a new person to your team, what are the couple things that you're looking for, or some of those things that must be present in order for them to work on your squad?
I mean, someone who has an innovation mindset to help kick us out of sometimes the rut or the way that we typically like to do things is always a positive for us. But overall, somebody who's just a really good teammate, someone who's willing to jump in on any project, whether it's their idea or somebody else's that they need to be able to help out with.
Flexibility is so important in this industry, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you're just, you have that dedication built into you that you want the team to be the best, and you're willing to jump in and on anything and everything that's going on, not just in the department, but as the organization as a whole. I mean, those people are invaluable, right? I mean, you can't have enough of, I think in baseball they call it 5-tool players, right? You can't have enough of that.
Jack of all trades. I tell almost everybody we hire here at STN, your job description will change probably every month. So you need to be flexible. And as we get new clients, and for you as new platforms, you may have to have someone that runs TikTok 24/7 in 2 years. Who knows where things will go. So that's the important thing about it, being flexible.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily a jack of all trades. I think in what we do, there's definitely specialty skills and things that you want to be a master at, as opposed to being just really good at a lot of things. But more than anything, it's just the willingness to be able to jump in. If it's in your comfort zone or not, right? You're willing to handle.
Well, and to your point, you're expert at analytics. Can they go down because you need an extra set, an iPhone roamer on the field because someone's sick that day? Stuff like just being able to say, no, I'm analytics. Sorry, I don't do that. No, you need to. We need people that can run and gun type deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, how are you guys internally measuring your success? We talked a little bit about your growth and engagement. Everybody wants to have double-digit engagement, things like that. But are there numbers, whether it be on CrowdTangle or maybe internally at the NFL? I know they send out those weekly reports. A couple of numbers you're looking at weekly to kind of assess success for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we always want to see that engagement move. We're not all of a sudden concentrating on being number one in all that categories. We'd love to be, but we want to see that moving in the right direction. Some weeks we can probably ascertain as why we didn't move up 2 or 3 spots or 5 spots, right? And then that's allows us to better put the screws in on how we can do better on those weeks where we don't have news or we don't have the best creative content that we've come up with. I think as far as, what we're trying to develop is more of a growth strategy on Instagram for ourselves. We've done really well over the past couple of years, but that's an area where more and more of, the social attention is being is in Instagram, on the platform and in the stories. So we're trying to, do better in adding followers and subscribers to those channels. That's tough because a lot of times you're, speaking to the same Broncos fans, right? So
at what point do you meet mass saturation where every Bronco fan that would follow you has followed you type deal? There's some of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So the number of followers at the end of the day is kind of a vanity metric, but I still don't think that we've reached the amount that we can be at.
Right.
So it's not the number one thing that concerns us. We always just want to see more consumption and more engagement across the platforms. But we'd like to see ourselves grow.
It's funny you say vanity metric, because that's the one thing people that aren't in the depths of social and at the higher level, the presidents and CEOs, they just want more followers. They want 1 million followers. They want 10 million. Why does this team have more followers than us? And you much rather have a more engaging audience at a lower follower rate than more followers than a less engaging rate. But that's tough to communicate. That's an important vanity.
Well, and when Facebook, broke out your reach, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that's the likes that you have.
Exactly.
that was a tough one to explain back in the
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
and now I think that the higher ups understand that your like number isn't as important as who you're actually reaching with your post, and I think all the platforms to some extent are there,
Yeah.
right? Like whatever your Twitter number is, like you're not reaching all those people,
No.
right? So that's the more important number of what's actually happening, as opposed to that vanity number of we have a cajillion followers across all our platforms. That's if you're not getting them to engage, it doesn't really matter.
Yep. And I think, Facebook on average is like 0.01% that you can reach organically. So what is that? If you have 1,000 followers, you can reach one of them type deal on average. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, and I mean it makes you create a paid strategy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, it's a pay to play space, and
100%.
you have to be able to understand what deserves dollars and what dark posts you might need to put out there, as opposed to just we're just throwing it all in the feed.
Have you guys experienced, super random, but have you experienced it all with Facebook groups at all, or have you seen anybody do that to success?
We haven't, and it's something that I've had Caroline Dicely on our social team really start looking at for us. I know the Miami Dolphins have done one, and we'll probably be reaching out to them to find what their success has been like for it. But at the end of the day, I mean, any way that we can help facilitate fan conversations around our teams in general, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It makes it tough to be able to give them free reign, but still try to have some input and control over it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the separation in my mind is. If we want to do this, we need to have a really thoughtful process of why and how we're doing it, as opposed to we're just creating a group.
This is like, again, getting really granular, but in Instagram, you can also tell what piece of content has gotten you the most followers. Just going, those of you who don't know that are listening, going into insights, going into sort by engagement, but you can sort by follows. And you can tell what piece of content kind of got you the most followers based on that content. I say that because I wanted to see from your standpoint, Ben, has there been like a successful single tweet or Instagram campaign that has led to a really amazing amount of growth that maybe you didn't expect going into it?
I mean, most recently, we did the two pieces for the schedule release. We did the Madden piece, and we did a text message thread or an instant message IM thread with our guys. And quite frankly, I thought they would both do well, but I was shocked at how well that conversation in the iMessage performed compared to the Madden piece. Because at the end of the day, I mean, this is me sitting back here thinking, like, if I'm a fan, I want to see what the content of the schedule is, right?
Yeah.
Like, today is schedule release day. I want to see the schedule. But at, what we've seen from just our, post-performance analysis was being fun, and having that conversation between our players actually was the best route for our fans, as far as not just engagement, but also.
That is interesting that you did a legitimate A/B test for schedule release, which I don't think a lot of teams did, but that's super smart. You guys did that.
Well, and I'm still curious. We're trying to. We'll probably A/B test some more of this later,
Right.
But was it how close we posted it to the schedule release? Did we need to give it some more breath? Should that have been something that we posted later in the morning, right? So, not to diminish the success of the post at all, but there's a lot of things around why that may have performed better than what we thought the original schedule release did. But no, just some interesting learnings that we took off of this past week.
Well, I think a lot of, and I'm sure you have some colleagues internally at the Broncos that make these incredible video pieces or these promos, and I think it's frustrating for a lot of long form editors that create this minute long, beautiful, gorgeous piece with music, and it's very tense and it gets the fans riled up, and then a picture of an egg gets 100 million likes or whatever it was. So I think sometimes the budget going behind some of these things may not get the same engagement, but it's tough to choose why certain things work and why they don't.
And you look at that and it's like, this cost me however many man hours and development hours to make this beautiful thing. Exactly. And posting something completely random does so much better.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes to internet and social media culture to some
Yeah.
degree. I mean, when you think you have it figured out, you get hit with a left hook.
Yeah, I think, if no budget in the world, if it was all about engagement, it'd probably be best to just focus on memes and GIFs, and that's it. Just focus on the stuff
Well, I
that,
mean, you see it. There are accounts out there every day that just regurgitate memes,
yeah,
right?
right.
And hundreds of thousands of followers and
Yep,
likes. And unfortunately, from a sporting club and a brand place, that's not something that you really want
exactly.
to go overboard and do.
Yeah. All right. So I gave you your nightmare scenario of 0-16. I'll give you a dream now. And that's Ben, they come into your office. Your direct report says, you have all the budget in the world now. You can do whatever you would like with your department. What are some of the things immediately that you would love to do as you are kind of kid in a candy shop in this scenario?
I mean, gosh, now you've got my mind running wild. I think something that we've seen across all platforms is just they become more visual mediums, right? Whether they are motion graphics or high impact videos. I'd invest more resources in producing that type of content. I think we're doing a good job trying to produce that, but that's with limited resources, right? We a handful of editors that are able to do that, and a lot of the real engagement that happens, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, is in real time. And I think that's one thing that the Bleacher Reports of the world do great. They're watching the Grammys and they're ready to hit you with something, right? Or what have you. And that's leaching into all the other areas of pop culture. That's something that it's tough with a limited staff to be able to have someone always on call to always create these things. To some extent, you can plan for some of these things in advance, but at the same time, I mean, you got to be willing to throw something together and pull the trigger. And we all like to have lives outside of our our roles and responsibilities, and that can be tough. So I would put more resources at having real time producers 24/7, 365, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that you say that because after a game, it'd be great to cut together a Bleacher Report style sizzle reel, 60 seconds with a cool beat. But that can take 20 hours for a video editor to go through footage and find the right music and cut to the beat. And you just don't have 20 hours for one single piece with all the different things you have going on.
And sometimes get approvals, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it's
after the 20 hours have been spent,
using a player or a front office staff member, like that's got to be vetted sometimes through the appropriate chains. And, if you're talking an hour later, sometimes you've already missed the ship.
Yeah, absolutely. From a branded content standpoint, you mentioned the counterpart in the Dolphins. I think they did a pretty good job, and we saw some of the press came out last year about their, I guess, success on monetizing their digital platforms and what they've been able to do. At the Broncos, how far along are you guys in that process? Do you have a point where you have rate cards and you have systematic digital series that can be sponsored, and what's been the success rate for you guys?
Yeah, we've been modifying that over the past couple of years. That's something that I'm involved with on a regular basis with our sponsorship team. We've kind of gotten out of the habit of just trying to create as much content as we can and in hopes that some of it gets sold. But we've tried to be more focused on our end of content production, as well as here's some sellable assets for them. So as opposed to having a list of 100 things, we're trying to compartmentalize it down to here's 12 different things that we think you might be able to sell. So that's really been, the genesis of where we're trying to get with them. Now, of course, there's going to be, a sales process that, this potential partner or this partner would like that. And a lot of times I think, understanding what their goals and objectives are as being a partner with us helps us align what content could be. In our world, it's really difficult to have a transactional relationship. So we're going to sell you 10 posts to send foot traffic into your store. I mean, that's not really an area that we can deliver for them. So that's not something that we want to be able to necessarily craft content specifically for that. It's not going to be engaging for our fans, and in the long run, that's going to hurt
It
us.
needs to be more of a brand awareness, credibility play where you're attaching your brand to a very established brand in the Denver Broncos type deal.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, a lot of our partners understand that they're aligning with us because of the halo effect, right?
of course.
They want to be, part of us because what we mean to the people around us and our fan
Yeah.
base. And if we can know some very high level objectives from them, it's pretty easy to understand where we can go with some content there. But when you're trying to get down to a transactional level,
Yeah.
and they're giving you X and expecting Y on every post, like that makes it a challenge for not just our team as far as producing content, but also our sales team to try to explain that to the potential partner.
Use code Broncos at checkout. um, how do you see social changing in the next 3 to 5 years?
Wow. I mean, I guess if we all knew that, we would probably, have a lot of stock
Yeah,
plays tied up
exactly.
in specific platforms.
I'm mad that I
But
didn't buy Disney Plus stock. I went up about 13 points. We all knew that was going to be a big deal. It's like, I'm in
yeah,
it. Yeah.
no, well, yeah, Disney's a monster in the space,
I mean,
obviously. I mean,
I've been
just
saying
not
every,
just content as a whole, but sports with
yeah,
ESPN.
yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to get away from Disney in the entertainment space, and that's what we all like to do with our discretionary time.
That's what I'm saying. I think as a parent in the United States, you have to have now Disney Plus. I mean, it kind of forces your hand in a way, which is a pretty cool way for Disney to be a part of. Anyways, off topic.
Yeah, but no, as far as where I see social going, again, I think it comes back to being a little less is more. I think it's going to continue to be a very visual all the platforms will be very visual for us.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to be more sophisticated on the content we're producing. Again, coming back to more personalization for each platform. And who knows? I mean, the platforms are already curating our content for us. Maybe it becomes down to content specific. So, I mean, if you're
Yeah.
a Broncos fan, right, and you're only liking photos, well, maybe you're not seeing video in the future, right? Or maybe you're not seeing link posts in the
Yeah.
future. So I think it comes back to being really, having specificity across the platforms and being very visual at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I've said it a lot in this show too, but 5G is going to really change the game. I mean, 4G, like a lot of people don't remember, but before 4G, there was no video on Instagram, there was no video on Facebook. That technology alone just skyrocketed the social media game. So I'm excited to see what 5G brings. I can only imagine the features that get unlocked at the different platform levels once that speed is at an all-time high.
Well, we haven't even scratched the surface on AI and bots. I mean,
Yeah,
not new technology, but something that is becoming more ubiquitous in our everyday life. So 5G will definitely help with the speed and latency
yeah,
going back and forth with what those requests are and how quickly the command comes back. You can already use your Nest thermostat to as you're coming home to warm up. So
yeah.
I mean, really, the more connected we are, the possibilities become less and less limited.
All right, I'll get you out of here, but I have some rapid fire questions to wrap things up. What is the one social or marketing tool that you cannot live without?
Right now, for us, it's Track Maven. Track Maven is a great partner for us, and we track everything as far as all our social metrics there. CrowdTangle's a great resource that we have too. But overall, I mean, we track and tag just about everything we do in Track Maven, and we'd be lost without them.
It's awesome. From a business perspective, what social platform seems to be working the most right now?
Instagram,
Yeah.
Instagram stories. So just say Instagram as a whole. I mean, that's where content is. That's where advertisers are. That's where attention is. I mean, right now, that's the whole ball of wax.
Yep. So that being said, can you rank in order of importance or, I guess, time spent in your organization? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube. How do you rank them?
It's tough to give a hierarchy as far as order of importance,
Yeah.
but time spent. I mean, Twitter still gets a lot of our time. That's still our constant news feed. Instagram's getting more of our time. We've posted less on Facebook, which has been successful, but it's being more thoughtful about that. So I wouldn't say less time there. Over the past year and a half, we've really, gone deep in on YouTube, and we've seen some really good success on YouTube. I want to see us continue there. We've basically used Snapchat as our game day or our special events sort of behind the scenes type of platform. I'm excited about some of the features that Snapchat will be unlocking with all the different filters that they're going to be able to provide us to create. Finally, some analytics and measurables for us to see how things are working as opposed to just knowing who's viewing it, right? So I think all that's going to be a benefit for Snap. So I'm looking forward for a bounce back right there for them.
And our industry, FOMO is a major thing. I always ask this question: how do you stay up to date? How do you make sure that you're keeping your thumb on the pulse of the ever-changing industry?
It's tough, man. You gotta stay attention. You gotta stay paying attention. I've gone from a heavy Twitter user to a heavy Twitter lurker. So I'm constantly paying attention to what's going on in the space, and that's probably the biggest thing. I look at some of the brands like Nike with their campaign for Tiger, right, and their Dream Crazier. All those were awesome, and just looking at those types of campaigns gives you I don't know, it gives you real inspiration to want to produce content in that manner or like them. So you just got to be able to, stay nimble and pay attention to everything.
Yeah, I was wondering that was an amazing commercial they dropped when Tiger won the Masters. If they had that pre-cut before the Masters started, or once they knew he may win, if they gathered the team together and cranked, because it was they used a lot of photography, and it seemed like it could have been a quick edit if they needed it to be. So I get geeked out over the process of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge golf buff, so I've been paying attention. Tiger's been playing really well for the past year, basically.
So he has a chance now. Yeah.
And it wasn't just something that I'm sure they threw together the week of Masters. Right. I'm sure they were anticipating, especially after the Tour Championship, they were anticipating him most likely winning another major, right? So they probably had, and I don't want to speak for Nike, but if Tiger was my athlete, right, I would be planning for his success at some point.
Yes.
And whether you already had the storyline or some of the stock footage, I think they probably had the bones in place. And then once they saw, after Friday and Saturday's rounds, it's like, all right, we have to put this together. We have to finish this now.
That's the one thing about digital that in marketing people don't realize, even here at STN, the digital graveyard. And I'll go back to when we worked at the Panthers going up against you guys in the Super Bowl. There's a lot of video and images that did not get used because you have to prep all that stuff for the chance that you win. So I'm sure there's a lot of Tiger commercials that over the last year haven't been used, but we're kind of on ice, and more than anybody to plan for those events.
Yeah, no, I can take it back to the 2013 NBA Finals, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm getting ready to change over every single thing on the Spurs accounts to championship, and then we go to overtime, and a three-pointer.
That's why you left the Spurs. Yeah.
No. But I mean that was tough. I mean there's a lot of things that you had in the bag that never saw the light of day. So 100%. The digital graveyard's an accurate representation of that.
What inspires you on how to stay cutting edge?
I just love seeing all the amazing content that's pumped out. I mean, I use Nike as an example, but I mean, heck, even, the Browns and Bud Light. I mean, that was very creative. And when they won their game, they unlocked those fridges. Like, that was amazing, right? And, it's hard to say that, you would like to be in that position, but that was euphoria for them, right? So to some degree, maybe the wait was worth the benefit.
It goes back to your earlier point about empathy and just being genuine. Like, listen, we understand we've been terrible. We understand that getting one win is the goal now. So let's eventize around this when it happens.
Yeah, it's just amazing to see all the creatives out there, producing all this different content. So, you think you have a good sense of what something is or how you like to see things, and all of a sudden you see whoever's account just blow you away with something. It's like, man, that's amazing. Why couldn't we thought of that?
Yeah.
just seeing all the content creators out there. I think in general, sports, does a really great job of trying to deliver those storytelling moments to the fans.
I know the NFL has done a really good job over the last couple of years, actually putting money behind creating content for players and using the players because they just have such a greater reach than the league account or the team accounts. How has the Broncos kind of dealt with that with some of your top players? Do you create content for them? Are you helping them on their social? And how do you kind of work it all in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, it's a case by case basis, really. Some guys, we send just about any guy who asks photos or video of them. And so at the very lowest level, that's one thing that we can do to help them. And a lot of times we'll have a bug stamped on it and it gives us some residual results. But at the end of the day, we just want to be able to help the player. So when they ask, we try to help them in whatever way we can. Now, is it something that we're going to be able to be their private photographer or videographer for 3 or 4 days?
Right.
Sometimes that's not, reasonable for us to be able to pull off, but we always want to take what our players' needs are into consideration. And when we can, we definitely want to be able to deliver, anything we're able to help them with.
All right. What's your guilty social follow?
My guilty social follow is We Rate Dogs.
We Rate Dogs. All right. The animal accounts have actually made a huge impact here on the show with that question. So.
Yeah, no, they're amazing to follow. They always show cute dogs and they try to help animals. And
if you're having a bad day, that stuff cheers you up, man. It's good dopamine.
Well, they're good dogs. They're 12 out of 10 or 14 out of 10, and dogs are never worse than perfect. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah, We Rate Dogs is always a good follow.
Well, cool, man. I always ask this question at the end of the show, but if you can recommend anybody in our network for our listeners to gain some more knowledge, like you just laid down, anybody that you recommend we chat with.
Oh my goodness! If I start name dropping, I'm gonna leave somebody out. So I'm gonna have to hit you up offline on that.
Keep it political. I like it.
I named several social accounts out there that I'm doing that are doing a great job, and I think anybody on those teams would be valuable to reach out.
It. But, well, you and I will follow up on that and much more and stay in contact, man. But you're doing a great job over there, and congrats on all the success. And you won't have an 0-16 year. That was just a hypothetical question.
Oh, not. That's ever the goal around here.
There he is, Ben Hunt, Director of Digital Media at Denver Broncos. Thanks so much for taking the time, man. We'll talk soon.
You got it. Thanks, David. I appreciate it.
All right. It's funny. I felt like when I asked that question about being 0-16, it's like when a pitcher's having a perfect game, nobody's supposed to talk about it. If you do it, you're jinxing. He kind of looked at me like, don't you dare say we're going to go 0-16. But I think it's true. Like the Cleveland Browns, I'll give them credit as well. They've done a good job. And I like what he said there, just about empathy and being genuine to the audience. We've heard that a lot on the show, but there are certain things you can't control. And if that success on the field is not happening, how do you make sure you're supporting the fan base and really speaking for them, but also highlighting on some of the good things that's happening as well? As the fan is obviously it's short for fanatic, so it's a very passionate fan base, and how to inspire hope and also be genuine if things aren't going well. So I like that. I liked just really the granular detail of dark posting, different partnership requests, utilizing sub accounts when it's a PR or a community relations type of post, and then the Broncos on the mothership handle can amplify that. Just being smart about, listen, some of this stuff has to get out and has to be public, but it doesn't necessarily have to be on the @Denver Broncos or @Broncos Instagram feed. You can utilize other sub accounts to get the word out there about things. I like this take. I think some may disagree, but he's not going to be first to market. He's going to let some other folks figure it out when it comes to IGTV and some of these other platforms and feature updates. And I think he made a brilliant point. If you can't invest the resources, don't tease your audience. And Will and I were just talking about it off air. Don't tease your audience with every Monday you start dropping this beautiful IGTV series, and then you can't keep that up because you get busy. So before you go all in on something, making sure you have the resources and dedicate them, so you're not teasing your audience with 2 weeks of amazing content, and then after 2 weeks they're like, what happened to that series, that Monday series type deal. So really good stuff. Been talking to Ben over the years, just in the industry, and he's been always a great guy to kind of catch up with, and glad we had him on the show. Once again, the director of digital media at the Denver Broncos, Ben Hunt. All right, episode 33. As always, thank you to Will Kelly. Lauren, David as well, for all your help. Appreciate it. This has been the Business Social Podcast, powered by SCN Digital.